guys, welcome back. Oh my God, we're still on this crazy hat. Remember, we're moving to the next level on things, so things are going to take longer to do. Now, I'll review. This is the first picture, done on a beginning level. If you can take it to this level, you're ready to move on. Now we're doing a little bit more artsy work. So I have this hat and I'm working a gradient into the middle. If you didn't see the first video, please go back and check that out, just how I got to this point. Now, if you notice on this hat here, it didn't have a band, okay? There's a lot of open space in here for you guys to blend out and make look good. More interesting to the eye would be to add something. So I added a band, which is pretty common and popular, a ribbon on a top hat. Now, to get it to look like it's bending, you follow the bottom line. Now, this is a cartoony drawing, so it was hard to, her perspective is cartoony. Realistic, I would be changing angles, but I can't do that because we're working on an inked picture. So what you do is you sort of try to follow the line, going up and down and up and down until you get this line. Use a hard graphite pencil at first. And what I mean by hard graphite, it's going to say H on it for hard. Okay? If you use a hard graphite, it's going to be a very light line. And be prepared to erase that line. Now, I'm going to get into a whole lesson about adding things to pictures, but this is just sort of how I added the ribbon. So now the space is not this big, it's now this big. And I'm not dealing with something that's overwhelmingly large and having to get everything perfect. I've also added some visual interest to this. I've also darkened out a little bit more and worked on some of my layers. I still have this big open area of white, and that's going to fill in as I go along and add more layers. It kind of goes in. It still doesn't have a totally round look, and you're really not going to get that really round look because the value of the darkest pencil wasn't really that dark. So I got out Indigo Blue, which is probably the darkest blue that's in the Prismacolor set. And I started working a little bit with the Indigo Blue. And I took it at least up a value or two. Still not completely finished. And I've also added in some thread marks, just for interest, where I took the pencil and I just added in on the bottom layer a darker line. This is going to make the hat go from a glass look to a threaded look. And it's a texture. So that's how I do that. Once you do those, they're hard lines. I would suggest to you, this is a tip, get out a tiny little brush and a tiny bit of Gamsol. Make sure that brush is clean. Always work with a clean brush if you're going to be working and reusing a brush. It's got to be nice and clean. Clean it in fresh Gamsol. And then wipe. You dip it in. Just dip. And then wipe the brush off on some paper towels. Or your pants leg. Shh. I didn't say that. And then what you're going to do is take the brush and you're just going to go slightly over those lines and push them down into the paper. So they sort of fade into the paper as a dark mark and they don't have that liney look like you just scratched the pencil into it. And just very lightly with that dried Gamsol brush or mineral spirits, one or the other. And you can add some of those. Another thing that I did, which is one option, not the best option. We'll get to the best options in a little bit as we progress, but this is one option is I take a paint pen, and this happens to be Posca. There's many different ones on the market. In fact, I'm getting one in to try on Sunday. It'll be delivered. And what I'm going to do is very lightly with the Posca or whatever paint pen, I'm going to eliminate some of the thickness in the lines. And there. And any line that went astray in there. I've already done that on this picture, so I don't want to do it too much. And what that will do is reduce down that hard line that comes with the ink. And this will make it look a little bit more natural. It gives it a different look. Remember, no purling, no string of pearls around your object. It should be smooth gradient going to a softer, or it should just bluntly cut off from the background. And I'm going to do a whole lesson on hard and soft edges, so we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. Another trick, okay, that you can do is make sure your Gamsol brush is clean. And sometimes I put a drop of, like a couple of swabs of cotton in the bottom. So you could see this bit of Gamsol is getting a little cloudy. And I wipe the brush off on the cotton that's in there. Do it until it's dry. Now I want to lighten up my highlights like on the ribbon in a small place. Use your paint pen, lighten it up. Now, sometimes I tap it down, but you can also use a brush that's been dipped in Gamsol lightly and just run it over the Posca paint. Very, very lightly. And that's what that's going to eliminate. Do you ever see people that are making a hard line here? Say I want to put a highlight on her dress. And I see people go like that, and they put a highlight there, and they put a highlight there. And they leave these clumpy lines. And I used to do it too. Until you learn how to use a paintbrush or a paint marker, this is how you leave it. It's not meant to look like just a line on your page. And as I said, while it's wet, and you have to do it fast because it dries very fast, you can soften it up, tap it down with your finger, soften it up with some Gamsol, odorless mineral spirits, and just soften it. Which, of course, this is not softening because I let it go too long. You sort of have to be prepared. Yeah, that dried really quick. Let's see if I can do it on here. And then you get it immediately while it's wet. See? And that adds in the highlight. That one worked. That adds in the highlight and softens the edge. So you don't have that lumpy, hard edge look. Like that. If you let that dry, but it's not bright enough for you, you can add a second one over it once it dries. Tap it into the paper and let it dry. Run a little brush over it if you need to. And your highlight is much softer. Another thing that you should do, another tip, make a copy of your pictures before you do them. Now, I've gotten much more into making copies of my pages instead of drawing right into the books. In fact, I'll probably stop coloring in my coloring books from now on. If you make a copy of it, you could do the same picture twice. Now, think about that. Do you ever look at a picture and You do it and you're like, oh, it's good, but I would have done it this way, or I would have done it this way. Well, do your pictures two ways. Fix your mistakes in the second picture. It will benefit you. It will increase your skills because you're actually seeing yourself progress. Did you ever look at your work from like a year ago or 6 months ago, and what you used to show off as good, you go, oh my God, how did I ever show anybody that? It's another way you know that you are progressing and your skills are getting better. When your own work doesn't look so good anymore, you don't want to show off your work. Your baby stuff that you did the first time you opened up a book, you're going to be like cringing. That's how you know that you're improving. So let's get the next color down on this. So far I've got 4 blended colors on there. Maybe even more, because indigo, let me see, I have indigo, I've got blue slate, I think this is China, cobalt, and blue violet. I added a tinge of black, and now I'm going to start my shadowing. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a reference picture for this picture. That's why coloring books are kind of hard to do anything realistic, because you don't have anything to look and guide you. So for this, you got to kind of do your mind. Now, can you guess where my light source is going to come from before I do this? Right there, you can tell. The only way for the shadow to have been in this direction is for the light to have been hitting it like that. If my light is hitting it like that, I know that this side of the hat is going to be lighter than this side. And you see how it's all going to lift up, because this is on top of this, my shadow is behind it. So now I'm going to take my 90% cool gray. Why did I pick cool gray? Because blue is a cool color. It was an easy choice. And I'm going to darken up, bringing my pencil, my hands down here. My intermediate students are no longer allowed to be coloring like this unless you're doing detail work. We're filling in, and we want a lighter touch. We go back here, and I'm going to shadow in this side. Well, it's actually shading, but you know what I'm talking about. I'm going to shade going down this. I definitely want a value difference from here. I want this to be darker, even though the hat is going around on both sides. This side is where the sunlight is coming in on. You're shining in over here. So I definitely want a value difference on this side of the page. Very lightly. The lighter the better, because you can, if you're doing it lightly, you can control. If you're doing it too dark, you'll create a value that's not smooth. Your gradients are not even. Remember, we're doing light strokes. Even if you have to put 10 layers on of light strokes are better. Now, I already know that I'm going to be editing a lot of this part out, because it's just going to make the video too long and I won't get to everything. But my time, the number of layers, you could be working on this a long time, as long as you're getting your gradients to go. Now, you see how all of a sudden this became very bright. I'm going to turn this brightness off by bringing the colors into each other. But before, I didn't want to do it. I only wanted to take it to a certain level so that I could play with my darker values. The darker this area becomes, the lighter your highlight becomes. I was in a chat tonight, and it wasn't a coloring chat with people who do coloring books. It was like for real artists. And one person in the chat tonight said that they're about to start a commissioned piece, and he's scheduled in 100 hours. Yep, guys, 100 hours on an original piece. And that's not odd. You could put in a couple, I mean, if you put in 3 or 4 hours a day, a little bit over a month's worth of work, which is not odd for an artistic piece. I mean, I know that you see them done in hyperlapse on the on YouTube, and it's deceiving. Okay, that's as dark as I'm going to go right now. And now I'm going to start on this side, and I just want to bring the curve around. I'm not going to go as far out into the picture as I did this side, but I need to start evening them up a little bit. Now, gray is going to be probably the darkest value I put on this side. I'm going to go all the way to black on this side. But I'm playing the seesaw game on here with the colors, back and forth and back and forth. Okay, now you can see it's starting to round itself off. I'm doing it very lightly, and then we had that. Now I'm going to go back to my original color, the lightest blue, and I'm going to start bringing that in because it's definitely way too much. But what's good about it is that I have a layer of white in there, so it's never going to go too dark. I'm doing this to tone it back slightly because in reality it is a material, it's not glass. If it was glass, I would say go for the bright white, but this isn't glass, so we got to just do what we got to do. Very lightly, and I'm not trying to make any heavy marks. Now, I still have some marks on there from when I wanted to put the striations in. I have some of the detail on it. Now I'm going to go to my next color, and I'm going to start working in a little bit more of my second color. This is my Cobalt Blue. I hope I mentioned, which I don't think I did, this is by Sherri Baldy, and I want to make sure that I give her proper props. She's got an Etsy channel, or an Etsy store, and her coloring pages are really reasonably priced and adorable. And this one, I don't remember what the name of this one was, but it's in her shop. It's not hard to find if you just go through the pictures. See, now it's taking on sort of a shiny satin look. And that's how the texture that I wanted. It's funny because my bridesmaids, I made them dress in shiny blue satin. I don't know why they're still speaking to me. That was way back in the 80s when shiny satin dresses were just the rage. Of course, satin makes everybody look like gigantic warthogs, but I chose that color only because one of my bridesmaids already had a dress, and as silly as this sounds, I didn't want her to have to buy two ugly dresses. So I told all my bridesmaids to buy blue satin and they can get any style they wanted. And they did. God bless them. Okay, so my values here are starting to blend together because I've taken this darker, this is evening up and it's not sticking out as far, which just says I need to darken this up a bit. So I'm going to get out my black. Now you can use indigo blue, but I have the value of indigo blue in here already, and I want this darker. So very lightly, I'm going to use the black. Now I know I always tell you guys to be very sparing on the black. I'm doing a hard edge on the ribbon so that it sticks out from the rest of the hat. I want it as a separate entity. It would be really helpful once I do edges with you guys. But I'm just stating this for the record in case somebody's going back, and I've already done the hard edge, soft edge lesson. Just darkening it up. I want this to really be like a dark blue. Remember, no pearls. Get used to me saying that. Do not create pearls. There is no pearls in this. Okay. Now, I really need a light blue, like a cloud blue. Okay, I got out my powder blue because my picture is screaming for it. It's still like I have a spotlight on her head, and that's way too shiny. But the light blue that I brought in as my lightest value is too dark. So, because I've done it the way I've done it, I could still play with my values. And powder blue is exactly what I needed. Now, if I wanted to make this very satin, I would just leave the white as being white. But since I'm making this like material, I don't want too much bright white on it. Now, I'm using powder blue. I can even go, if I want to keep it even shinier, I could go down to cloud blue too. Now, could you believe one hat took me 2 videos to do? And I haven't even worked in another area. Now, I'm also working with the powder blue. Powder blue is going to blend out its darker counterparts. So if I wanted to start blending these colors out, I can start going down to the tip and applying a little bit more pressure. That'll help darken it up a little bit without adding more saturation on it. And as you can see, the lines in the hat are still there from before because I buried and I pushed in a deeper color so that I can get that texture. And this is why I tell you that a pencil is also a tool. Your tips are... See, I look at tools, at things that you use to create, like a paintbrush is a tool. Even though on a pencil you have the medium is in it, the core, you use the core as a tool to darken and lighten. Am I making sense? And I'm doing larger, rounder circles. I don't want you to think I'm going back over it in a scribble fashion. You only do 2 different strokes, or a couple of different strokes, and one is the tapered stroke and the other is circular. And then the third one would be well, I guess cross hatching, and then you can do dotting. Okay, this is coming along nicely. I'm going to leave that alone just for now because I don't want to finish up and saturate my paper so much that I can't play with the gradient afterwards. I still have a nice bright highlight. And if you remember from the other video, there is white in there. I probably could add a little bit more. And this will darken up the white because I'm pulling in some of that powder blue into it. It's not going to stay dark, bright white, which is what I want. Once I want to add a bright, I'll go and use my Posca because it's controlled. And I'm going to just brighten up the highlight bring it back to that satin finish. Okay, that'll start to change once I get the color into the swirl. It won't be as in your face. I'm using black. Okay. Now, this area is a little bit too bright. So I'm not going to immediately take it down with my black. I'm going to sort of transition it with a couple of layers of the violet, the blue violet. Now, I don't have these twigs done or any shadows on them, so that's going to make a difference too. I don't want to take this area too dark, because then I won't be able to judge. And remember, this side is going to be darker. I have plenty of tooth left in this, because I've done so many softer layers, like lighter layers. I didn't varnish the paper at all, or burnish the paper. And that happens when you go hard. You kind of smash everything down together. No, I have inserted the wrong clip. This is a copy of it. I've started working on the dress. So I'm going to handle this and show you how to do this. I am using an inspiration picture, and that'll be in my next video. So take care. Bye-bye.